Let's talk some shit.
Welcome back to Earth 718. Today we are going to be discussing cities with high crime rates, such as Chicago, Detroit, and their lack of superheroes in comic media. For example, Marvel doesn't have a very high population of heroes that come from anywhere but New York. DC has fictional cities everywhere, so we're going to be discussing the fact that some cities like Chicago do need more heroes, and why that would be important for the youth of our country. Today on my panel I have some familiar faces and a new face. First off is Nico. Say hello to our fans.
Yo.
Izaku, who is back after a week hiatus.
What up?
And last but not least, we have Turtle.
Hi guys.
Oh my god.
Here we go. Alright, so let's open this up, get things started in a pretty simple note is, what do you guys think about the fact that there aren't too many heroes that come from places like Detroit, Chicago,
Baltimore,
Kansas?
Milwaukee,
Yeah.
Kansas City.
Our geographer is here.
Let's start off with Nico, then we'll move on to Turtle, and then Izaku.
Well, I mean, I think now, in modern day, it is an issue that we can discuss. But I mean, back in the day when like let's say DC or Marvel was first created, we're talking about what, 40s, 30s. Well, I mean, you know what I'm saying? So it's like around that time, the majority of the country's population was located in the East Coast. Because I don't think, especially during the 30s, I don't think the highways were even built. I think the highways were built after World War II, right? So it's like that's when everybody went out west. So it makes sense that all the heroes are from New York or this part of the country. Now it's like, no. Yeah, New York is still a major part of the country, but LA is a big city in this country. Chicago is, Detroit is, Dallas, wherever. So
New York is, yeah, I know what you mean. We just need more New York heroes.
we just need more New York heroes. All the heroes should be from New York at all times. But I don't know, like it is. I think it is an issue, and they should fix it. And this is where, and I know I've said this numerous times across. This is our third podcast across the other two podcasts we did, but it's gonna come down to storytelling. They have to come up with new heroes, not even new origins, new heroes from like that are born and raised and operate in Chicago, in Detroit, in the other cities plagued by high crime rates that Turtle mentioned.
I think we dabbled into that last week on the Steve Rogers Secret Empire thing. We talked about the fact that we need more new heroes, and I think it is an important thing to talk about.
Yes.
Just because kids are being born every day and they need something to look forward to.
Exactly.
They're not all born in New York.
No.
Yeah, instead of recycling a lot of the same characters and placing them in the same cities, I think it's important to diversify and not also to pigeonhole these cities into being like these are crime cities like Chicago and Detroit. To give them like, kind of their own unique stories that would make it an interesting story that kids and adults and everyone across the country can relate to.
Question for you.
Yes.
Being that, for the people, our listeners who don't know, you were born in.
I was born actually in Albion, Michigan, which is a town in Michigan. But when I was 3, I lived in Detroit for the small part, like the beginning of my growing up, and then moved on to Buffalo.
And your family does have some roots in Chicago as well.
Yeah, my parents actually met at the University of Chicago, spent a couple years there, and then and then once they started my family, they rooted themselves in Detroit.
So I can put this. So as you were growing up, would it have given you some sort of pride if there was like a famous hero from those areas?
Oh,
like
yeah.
you know the way it is, like they play up Spider-Man all the time. He's from Forest Hills, right? Forest Hills, Queens,
Yeah.
and Captain America. He operates all over the world, but he's from Brooklyn. That's a major part of his character. So that giving you a sense of pride.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I mean, like, growing up, like, the only people really know that they can relate to, it's like, oh, you're from Detroit, did you know Eminem? So having someone other than Eminem who was an actual superhero, even though, respect to Eminem, it would be cool to have that, someone is, like, just in comic books, you go to your local comic book store and you could, like, pick up an edition, superhero from your neighborhood. And especially if it was so, like, nuanced that, like, and specific that they mentioned your neighborhood or, like, next neighborhood over, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
And just, like, the places that you go to eat in the streets that
Yeah.
if those are all things you could, live and then also read about, that'd be awesome.
Continuing the path to inclusion in the comics industry.
Yep.
Zaku, what are your thoughts on the matter?
We're running out of space here.
On this couch?
So many. No, for example, Marvel has a lot of heroes that are based in New York, almost all of them, and it's to the point now where it's really hard for you to tell a story about one hero, protecting the city when they're all so close together. So it's like as soon as one thing happens, how is it that Captain America didn't show up to something in Queens and stuff like that, or like if something's going down in the city, like how many people show up, like, and throughout the event, like if there's a fire, like Spider-Man shows up and then there's Captain America runs in at the bottom, and none of it was planned. But then if you tell a story of how there was a fire in Manhattan and Spider-Man swooped in to save the day, you'll stop and wonder, like, where was Captain in all this? Like, he lives in New York too, like. This was in North Manhattan, right near Hell's Kitchen. Where was Daredevil? Or if it was higher up in Harlem, where was Luke Cage?
The Avengers Towers in Midtown. Tony Stark can see everything.
So it's like, how is it that you can tell a story about one hero doing so many different heroic, what do I say? What's the word I'm looking for? Heroic actions in this small area. Meanwhile, there's like hundreds of other heroes that live in that same general area. You can't really tell that story.
It's the whole jurisdiction issue. It's like Daredevil is walking across the street, and Luke Cage is fighting a criminal, and he's like, that's too out of the way for me. We got too out of Hell's Kitchen for me to.
That's like what is like that precinct.
Yeah, do they do zoning in comic books? Is that a thing?
No.
Like you just hit 14
no one sits there. No one sits there and says like, like damn man, I can tell that he needs help, but that's in Harlem, so I can't go up there.
That would make sense. They should map it out on some site. Just have like what heroes have gone out of their jurisdiction, just to
But there is no jurisdiction.
It seems like it though when you have
like we see Spider-Man saving everyone in Manhattan, but he's from Queens. Like
Yeah,
you
so
can't swing on houses. They're not that tall.
Yeah.
And then a lot of these comic book creators, I mean, they're from New York, so like how specific can they get in their? Like, is it that they can't get more specific in their issues because then people across the country won't relate as much? It's like I don't really care. Like. That Spider-Man only operates in this area of Queens, so like if you say New York, that's something I understand, but if you mention one neighborhood in Queens, what does that mean to me? Is that why? Or what kind of keeps people from, because that is an interesting issue that we have all these superheroes in different areas, but they don't really specify so much in the issues where they operate.
I think they just don't clarify. They don't like to continually talk about it to overexpose it, which is I guess it's bad in a sense, because if you talk about the fact that Spidey is from Queens or Cap is from Brooklyn or Luke Cage is from Harlem, it becomes a very big important part of their character, and that's something you want to see. But we don't really get that. We just get, he's a New York hero. He's a hero from Illinois. He's a hero from this place. But it would be important to kind of focus on that. I mean, Blue Beetle did a great thing where they had, he's of Mexican descent, so they had him talking about the leftover food he had in the fridge that his family made, the home-cooked traditional Mexican meals, which is great. Like, it's not something you see all the time. But we would love to see that for people and where they live.
So I guess even though we're like talking about how all these other cities are like not represented, it's kind of like we feel underrepresented too as New Yorkers, that we don't have these superheroes that are, they don't talk so much about the actual neighborhoods that we're in, and they don't really, talk about our experience as New Yorkers, just New York in general.
Yeah, it's true.
So
not a lot of New York issues pop up within these comics. It's just
New York. But I guess, if you think like per capita, New York is pretty safe in general for its high population of how many do we have? 8 million? More? Lots of? We can look this up afterward, or maybe some of you guys can
comment below.
Comment below.
In the comments below.
We could do an easy Google search, or you can comment below.
We're going to have a survey down below that will have how many people live in New York.
I still got my Survey Monkey account from school, so we can use that.
There we go.
Survey Monkey, sponsor us.
If you get the answer right.
So it's an opinion question. How many people do you think live in New York?
Well,
anyway,
closest to the right answer will get a prize.
Just make sure you don't let people edit it.
I guess this whole topic originated. We just think it's interesting that, yeah, like, you know, New York City is a huge city with a huge population, and per capita, we're a pretty safe place to be. So can that be accounted for, all the superheroes that we have, you know, saving us in all the boroughs, whereas maybe other cities don't have that benefit?
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing. Like,
It's
honestly,
a thing. Good answer.
a
It's
thing.
great answer.
It is.
I'm blanking on it, and it's honestly, I think the reason why we have so many New York-based superheroes is just because New York's a popular place.
I mean,
And it could be back in the time when it was
also-
originated.
It was
easy to
rough.
draw.
Yeah.
It was rough. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I can't. Obviously, none of us were around during the 30s, 40s, 50s. But I mean, our families were around during the 80s, 70s, 80s, and the early 90s, and I mean, we all know it was rough in New York City, especially like in like uptown, Upper Manhattan, the Bronx. You want to be here.
You would say.
Yeah. So.
So do you think maybe comics kind of need to get more with the times in the areas that
Shift to areas that need
need
money.
saving?
I mean, that's why the X-Men was a really, since Marvel seems to have disowned them at this point, that's a really big missed opportunity right there, because, you know, X-Men are born around the world, all over the place, and the only mutants, I should say. But, you know, the school was based in New York, but then it's like after they leave, you know, Professor X's, you know, facilities, then, you know, they might go back home or find a job elsewhere, or, you know, locate themselves elsewhere, and it's just like, that's a really big missed opportunity that we have hundreds and thousands, millions
So are they
of
going back to their
mutants
hometowns?
around the world, but yet we only focused on the ones in New York, and they pretty much just stayed there.
And I think, in a way, they're trying to fix that. In my opinion, they're going about it the wrong way because of recent. I'm not sure if the current run is still going, but I mean, Daredevil, he was moved to San Francisco, even though I don't know what the crime rate is in San Francisco. I've always heard it was a really good city. But I'm saying he moved to San Francisco. In DC, Robin, who wasn't Robin no longer because the whole what was that story arc called with whatever, like he faked.
There was a story arc where things happened.
Things did happen. Anyway, he faked his death or whatever because identity was exposed. And I'm gonna hate myself for forgetting it because I kind of liked it. But he moved to Chicago, but he operated, I think, in a secret, some type of secret agency or whatever. He was like more like a.
He was like a secret. He was like a spy.
Yeah, he was like a spy. Yeah. But I mean,
That was the Nightwing series, right? Was it?
Yes. But he wasn't Nightwing. He was just he was just Grayson.
Grayson.
Yeah. But it's like, so he's like, he was, even though Gotham is not New York, if you follow the DCU, it's Jersey. However, but you can make a good argument that Gotham is New York City. So they took a character from New York City, Gotham, and transplanted him to Chicago. They took Daredevil, who was the devil of Hell's Kitchen, and transplanted him to San Francisco. It's like, well, cool, but in a way, do those cities get something out of it? Yes, but in my opinion,
And they could have homegrown heroes instead of transplanted heroes.
exactly. So I'm saying, so yeah, those cities get a little bit out of it, but at the same time, like the heroes, those characters lose a little something because it's like you want to take Spider-Man and you move him to, I don't know, move him Vegas, Austin, Texas, Vegas. It's like, well, the whole thing about Spider-Man, he's New York, he's a Forest Hills kid, blah blah blah. It's like he loses a little something, in my opinion, of his character.
Where was it that Venom moved? Because he went from New York to.
After Eddie Brock lost the suit?
Yeah.
And Flash Thompson became?
Yeah. He moved to another, I don't know. I mean, probably, Chicago, maybe. Probably not. He moved somewhere. That was part of their effort.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's all part of the whole inclusion questions. What we want is we want comics that can include anyone. Whether you're young, old, lesbian, gay, Mexican, it doesn't matter. Whatever you are.
Even they can sort of treat it like sports teams. I'm like, because I think about it, like, there's usually in certain states there's one team for that state. However, that whole team, the whole state, they support that team.
Yeah.
You know, even the surrounding cities, like take what is like, let's say like the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves, even though they're not in Atlanta no more, they're in Cobb County, but Cobb County is a suburb of Atlanta. So it's like you have the city of Atlanta, Cobb County, and probably the surrounding cities that are hardcore Braves fans. So you can do that too. The heroes don't need to be from a suburb. They could be from a major city of that state, but because we have a guy now that represents us, so now you have that whole population now. It's like, this is our guy,
and that could be a big turning point, or because you give them the big city that they can work out of, then you start to expand the story and have new heroes develop around them from smaller cities in the same area. It'd be a great way to just start including disenfranchised cities that really do need this.
Wasn't the new Scarlet Spider-Man? Ain't he from Texas? I want to say yes. That like the current one.
Let's go with yes.
I think he's from Texas. Or he operates in Texas.
Ben Riley.
The one that's in the black red suit. The current Scarlet Spider-Man.
Ben Riley's with the blue hoodie.
Yeah, I mean it could be Ben. I don't know. I don't know. But I'm blanking on it right now. But I think he operates. Maybe it's Austin. I think he operates in Austin. Yeah.
You probably know more than I do. So, going in the sense of inclusion, let's talk about some heroes that do exist within other cities like those, like Detroit and Chicago. What heroes are a big part of those cities and are just not focused on now?
Just to verify, Houston.
Okay, Texas. All right.
So yeah, let's talk about some of those heroes. Anyone have any examples of someone from Detroit or Chicago that isn't talked about enough, that could be bigger if they focus on them more?
Let's go with the hometown girl.
Hi guys, I'm your geography expert, but I am
Detroit
here
correspondent.
to learn more about comic books, so I'm gonna let Brandon get us started. I'm sorry, I'm gonna let
Who's Brandon?
Beat on.
There we go. That's a name.
We're all 3 drinks in.
Well, I know we talked about this earlier. John Stewart, Green Lantern, the first Black Green Lantern, which is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Architect.
Arguably, you can make a great argument that the most popular based on, was it the Justice League cartoon?
Yeah.
That was on Cartoon Network years ago.
Unlimited, was it?
I mean, it was unlimited. It became unlimited, but it was just Justice League.
Yeah, I mean, he's an example of he's an architect, he's black, he's a Green Lantern in Detroit. Like, that's a really great backstory for a character.
Which is cool to me because Detroit has a lot of great architecture, just putting that out there.
Yeah, I need it.
No, okay. Well, we have a lot of really good art museums, and I think you guys should all pay a visit.
It makes sense when things blow up or...
Now you guys are playing into that whole pigeonholing that we just...
People of Detroit were joking in the whole show.
We're kidding.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that's a really cool just characterization then. I mean, not that I'm hearing about this superhero. That sounds pretty awesome. He's an architect.
And he's a really like well developed, really important character in the mythos of comic books. They should really play up a lot more like, okay, like he is from Detroit. And maybe like include current events like, Detroit is, it is riddled with crime or whatever, and it's not reaching its full potential that it can be. So it's like, okay, play into that as well, and maybe he'll go back or something.
Yeah, I think he did a great job as a character of standing on his own, even with the Green Lantern moniker. It's not something you see all the time. I mean, you get Dick Grayson as Batman. At the end of the day, he's just Nightwing to us. He's not Batman, he's Nightwing.
Yeah.
Same thing as Miles Morales. He's this whole other Spider-Man, but in the day, think Peter Parker first.
Of course.
Which, I mean, of course, is how things work.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else?
I mean, I know from Marvel's side, and we looked it up before the podcast, and we were both kind of confused. Like, really, was Ghost Rider from? Was it Chicago or where was Detroit?
It was Chicago.
I think Chicago. Yeah, but it's and we were both like, really?
Yeah.
Like, we didn't know that.
And the new Ghost Rider is what, Jaime Reyes?
Yeah, I don't think I don't think he's from Chicago. But I think I'm talking about Johnny Blaze. Johnny Blaze is from Chicago. Yeah, but I mean, he's a stunt artist. He's a legit daredevil. Yeah. So it's like, so he travels all over the country, all over the world, performing his stunts. So we just never know. Yeah. So we just never know what he operates.
He's from Illinois, but not Chicago.
Oh, okay. But but regardless, it's like when we talking about the sports team, it's like you're still gonna represent your boy. So he's from Illinois, so it's like that's your guy. Yeah. But they never play it up that he's from Illinois,
Yeah, he's just Ghost Rider.
Yeah. He's just Ghost Rider.
Tormenting souls.
There you go, giving penance stares to everybody. Yeah.
Look into my eyes.
Always in his Halloween costume.
He's always lit, though.
He's always lit.
It's lit.
He's lit. He's definitely lit.
Much like we are at present time.
And shout
Nah,
out
your
to
turn. That's the difference.
Dos Equis
yes for
providing us.
sponsoring us, and Tropicana
The most
for
interesting
providing the
man in the
mixer.
world.
Thank you.
It's as they both turned down our sponsorship.
So I
They
guess
got our
wanna know-
emails. They got our emails.
So being the one person in this living room right now who is not from New York City originally but has found a home here, what's your interest in having, non-New York City superheroes across the country, maybe the world?
I don't want them. I don't need
We
them.
don't need
I'm okay.
we gonna build walls.
Oh, I just want to build a wall around New York City.
Yeah, and then we
a
just
great big wall that every other city will pay for.
a great big wall with a great big door that we're never gonna
That
open.
we're never gonna open.
We have airplanes, right?
Well, try to get those airplanes over.
Over the
This
wall.
is gonna be a really big
It's gonna
wall.
stop you
Oh,
out.
okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna call it the
Yeah,
space.
this wall
We'll go
not
over
only could you see it from space, it's gonna be in space.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna reach space.
And the more you try to climb it, the bigger it gets over time.
Yeah, it's like quicksand,
we-
but with a reverse
Reverse
wall.
quicksand. Reverse.
Got-
reverse.
Yeah.
And at the top of this really tall wall, it's gonna be a
The
fish
Justice
tank.
League Tower.
It's gonna be a fish tank
gonna
all
be a fish
around
tank.
it. It's gonna be filled with sharks
Space
with
sharks.
lasers.
Space sharks with
With
lasers.
lasers.
You know
we
what?
took this joke
Write this down.
Write this down. You know what? I'm gonna tweet Trump because he needs to hear this
too
idea.
far. This went way too far. But to answer
Anyone
your
answer my question? Yeah.
To answer
What question? What was your question? Can you repeat the question?
Who are you?
I guess what I'm asking is, being the only non-native
Oh,
New Yorker
yes,
at
yes.
this table
right.
in our living room,
Right.
where what's your interest in having superheroes represent in different cities that aren't New York, being that you guys are true New Yorkers?
I'll answer first so I can shut the fuck up.
Oh, excuse me.
I think it would be great. I mean, because we had this argument in the unaired episode. We talked about just expanding on culture
Buy the DVD.
and buy the DVD and it'll come in with commentary.
It's really just a CD
Deleted
because you won't see
scenes.
us.
Deleted video commentary.
Yeah.
I think it's important because by including more cities, you're also including more culture, and it's just you're expanding the universe so that it's entirely inclusive.
My God,
So
imagine?
if-
I'm sorry to cut you off. You imagine a hero from New Orleans
That would be
That would be
awesome.
You know
And
how
then his
crazy-
biggest
you know
problem
how much
would be
fun-
alcoholism.
and that
Like
and hurricanes.
It's
Oh,
it would
okay.
it would be great to see because
But I think what they need to, it's like you always have to stay relevant. Like a
didn't
city
finish.
within the, okay, I'm sorry to that. What I'm saying is like these comic books just need to, not stay
I've
with
been
this.
cut off 3 times now. All right.
Whoa,
You
whoa.
keeping count?
Whoa.
I have a white.
She
one.
gonna let you finish.
But, so, I think what they need, these creators, these writers, they have to stay with the times. You can't, fall on a topic for a comic book, that's based from the 1960s, like this idea of like race riots in Detroit. You have to go with like a city that's lost its population, that has a lot of open spaces. Really just like go with, the way a city has changed and is developed and, it's up and coming for what I believe to be, an urban renaissance. I think these issues just have to follow, current trends and not just be, stayed where the, generalizations come from years past.
But this is where the argument, the whole like rights issues pop up because that'd be great if you want to start your own comic book company that focuses on characters like that. That's perfect. But the issue is think of Marvel and has such a large database of characters that are pre-existing. They're not quite able to take characters like Spider-Man and move them entirely out of New York.
No, these would be
Mostly
new characters,
because,
right?
new characters, but with old characters specifically, you can't do that because it's a show of respect to keep them in New York, especially like Marvel heroes because Stan Lee is a character. Stan Lee.
He is a character.
He really is a character.
Condolences
Our
to
condolences.
The passing
Stan
of
Lee.
his wife.
Makes you rest in peace.
May she rest in peace. I think it's important to show the respect of the creator because Stan Lee's been around for so long. He was the man with the plan here.
He's been Stan the Man for decades now.
Yeah, Stan the Man. He's born and raised in New York.
Born in the Bronx.
So
Yes.
I guess it would be
it's
just
important.
modernizing those stories, like the story of Spider-Man.
Yeah, but we talked about this making new characters, new names.
To support her. I mean, in a way, in the MCU they've done that because if I remember correctly, Iron Man was always from New York, but in MCU, what happens? He's in LA and he has one of those gigantic houses houses on the side of the hill or the mountain or whatever. So it's like, okay, they took him, and that's believable. You can take a character like Iron Man and move him to LA because it makes sense. He's a show off. He's a playboy. Of course, you belong near Hollywood. Yes, and that makes sense. But you can't take Steve Rogers and he's from LA or he's from San Francisco, San Diego, or Oakland.
Spider-Man will struggle in LA.
Yeah,
because there's no buildings out there.
Yeah.
How would he get to work?
He takes public transportation like everybody else.
What, in LA?
That's why.
He take a lift.
Yeah. He's gonna take a lift.
We're gonna have
He's
Superman.
gonna ride his bike for an hour just to get to work.
Yeah.
We're gonna have Superman one day turning to Crypto and saying, "Crypto, we're not in Kansas anymore." Been waiting to say that for the past 30 minutes.
I see what you did there. I saw it. I didn't like it, but I saw it though.
But yeah, Zaku, what do you think? How do you feel about Turtle's question?
I mean, I'm all for it, and like I said before, a hero coming out of some place like New Orleans, or any other how do I put it, city with a lot of character. Like to see a superhero come from a city like that, you can see their background, you see their culture, to see them raised differently, see them see things differently from all these other heroes. Because if you're from New York, you've seen all these heroes from New York, they've all seen pretty much the same thing. So it's like, of course, we know what their tactics are going to be somewhat depending on their backgrounds. But for somebody to be from a city like New Orleans or something like San Diego or Green Bay, somewhere like North Dakota, you got all these places that you barely talk about it on a day-to-day basis. And it's like for a hero to come out from there and make an impact, that'd be interesting to see, especially if they're able to tell the story right and not just be like, this guy was born here, something happened or a freak accident happened.
And that's the one mention.
And that's his background. He lived a normal life. But he realized he has powers now, so he or she are using them for good. They saw a lot of crime in New York or Chicago, and they moved. So now Dakota's.
And I fall into that. I mean, I'm not originally from New York, and I found myself here. It is still that big city dream that.
It's like you're either gonna land
from other cities dream
or Los Angeles or somewhere in Texas.
That's a probably like a story mechanism that's been proven successful over time. Fish out of water. Mm-hmm. That's one of the main reasons why we find Thor stories, especially the movies. It's funny scenes. So it's like he gets in these situations where it's like, to us it's normal, but for
this would never happen.
Exactly. So it's like, okay, you can do that, and now that will break up the seriousness of the particular story at the time. Have like a little funny scene. Like for example, like in Thor 2, Thor was on the subway. It was like, come on. Even though it was very subtle and it was probably not meant to be funny, but it was hilarious because Thor on a subway in London.
In London.
Yeah.
Another great example, one that's a little more relevant, is Wonder Woman. She born and raised on this island all her life, secluded from the rest of the world, and all of a sudden she's in reality now in London, and it's just like seeing her interacting with the rest of the world. Wow, based on her knowledge that she only knows from reading these books about the world. It was funny to see that, like her just keeping up, her when she was trying on a dress, and she was just like lifting up the skirt to see how it looked underneath or how easy it would be for her to move in it, and it's like, and everybody around her's like, what the hell is she doing? Oh my god, it was fun seeing that interaction.
Yeah, I agree. We do need more of it. I mean, I think that's...
It's a lot of good storytelling there, especially like if you get somebody that's from somewhere out in, Tornado Valley? Somebody... Alley, yeah, sorry, but it sounded weird for me. Somebody that's from Tornado Alley to suddenly like show up in, let's say, New York, and they have to like go from this extremely flat suburban area into now, the hood in New York City.
Rural.
All right, if you want to be technical, rural.
Yeah. Even though we have tornadoes in Detroit, I will say.
They have tornadoes too, apparently, according to the news. They just don't last long.
Yeah, we had one a few
But you don't
years
have,
back.
experiences of the sky turning yellow and you hiding out in your basement?
That happened.
Or your tree going through your car?
I never had the experience of hiding in the tub.
Oh, we didn't have a tub in our basement.
I hide in
Do people usually
every day.
Oh. This heat is no joke, so... I'm happy to.
To get away from life.
New York is
tub of ice.
dangerous. You could walk out and nigga just tries to
Right.
smack you down. I mean, it's
They'll
why
come-
the rent's so. Hey, look, this is the important thing. In New York, in comic books, Marvel Comics, it must be free to live in New York because shit's always going down.
Seriously. Oh my god, it must be so cheap. Who wants to come here?
Oh, yeah, it's true. Your building is likely to.
Armies coming in and destroying everything.
Fucking, you gotta have a new apartment.
You have to
every
have like super villain damage insurance.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's how they're able to get away. That's how they
Yeah.
stop people. Okay.
I think we're okay. We're in the Bronx. I don't think there's been ever a major storyline involving the Bronx. I think
Yeah.
we're
Do we
fine.
have any characters? I think this might have been talked about.
Oh
in
yeah,
other-
we mentioned we
in
had
other-
this talk in the unaired episode.
the unaired episode.
I mean, we do have characters, but not major ones.
Okay. And like how how Bronx is it? Like how close do they get to?
We're gonna save that for
Yeah, we'll save that
another
for future.
time.
Alright, guys.
That's a whole other.
Future episode.
We're
I-
talking about separate cities.
Now,
in
like
New York.
something that really concerns me about if they do end up taking this route of creating heroes from all these not as popular, I guess you could say, cities, is same thing that I mentioned in our last episode or in the previous episode with the LGBTQT plus, I guess.
LGBTQ plus.
TQ plus. Yeah, and it says don't do these things only because they're relevant. So if things are going crazy in Chicago right now, don't all of a sudden swarm us with, oh, here's a hero from Chicago, here's a hero from Chicago.
Mhm.
Or if things are being, there's a lot of headlines about Detroit. Don't start releasing heroes in Detroit, or start sending our New York heroes out to Detroit and they station themselves there to fix these problems in the
Yeah,
comic
because
book
who are
world.
who are these New York superheroes to go in and think that they're the saviors of these other cities?
That's one thing, but then on top of that, it's just that that's a big issue where it's just kind of like, oh, they're only doing it because it's relevant right now.
Exactly.
Like you want it to just hit you out of nowhere, not saying like oh yeah, we're talking about Detroit, and then you turn your comic books and they're like, oh, we're still talking about Detroit. Like we don't. Personally, I feel like that should never be a strategy. I get it, for business, it's definitely good, especially for like the casual fans who are just like, oh my god, this is really relevant right now. Now there's a comic book about it, so I really should invest my time in this. Like, just surprise us. Don't follow don't follow pop culture. Just do what you just. Like I can't really put it any other way. Surprise us. Throw us a hero from South Dakota out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Or say, or give
and,
us a
and,
superhero.
and make sure that it's a
says
good story at least. Don't make it a boring story. It's like, okay, here's South Dakota. Ooh.
Yeah.
South Dakota man.
Or like send us,
South Dakota man would be great.
or like send us
You
a
know what,
superhero
I'm
for
gonna
Chicago
do
just
it.
because Trump says it's the scariest place to be right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Trump's gonna send in the feds. So.
So yeah, so we don't, just to like, like again, just like nuanced stories that like play to the city's appeal and character and culture and people than just like the, generalized stereotype news that you get.
Yeah.
These need to be good stories.
Yeah.
Speaking of Trump, there's actually a comic that was released, I believe, by Image, because Image don't give a fuck. They do what they want. They really do, and I love it. There's a comic called State of Hysteria, I believe. And it is about a post-apocalyptic world in which the political climate of America is similar to ours now.
Okay.
Pretty much, someone wins the presidency who's not supposed to. Shit goes bad, and then terrorists strike. And
You trying to
because the
say Trump
government,
was supposed to win?
everyone just like stop listening. But so yeah, it's a post-Trump era type comic where someone of his stature is the president. The government is failing, and then terrorists attack. So how does the government and our country deal with something of that level when we're already in a state of hysteria, which is what it's called. I'm sure it's good because Image doesn't release shitty products.
Yeah, most of their stuff is really good. Yeah.
Image is pretty good.
Yeah.
Shout out to Image, because why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Why not?
But yeah,
We got an email too. Hit us up.
I think that takes place in several places. So even doing something like that,
Yeah.
follow a team of heroes that aren't together yet. Follow them separately from different states.
Yeah.
Then for the last issue, bring them together
Mm-hmm.
and start the next run like that. I think that's important. Build your characters where they are together.
Mm.
That'd be good. Okay.
What's the time we got?
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say the reason I asked about the time is because I know the past couple podcasts we got a little bit overly excited and we went way past the typical hour, podcast time frame. But this one we're trying to really get serious about this, and we understand time is money and your time is valuable as well.
Niggas
So,
got drunk and shit.
Waste your time,
So
2017.
we're gonna try to keep this to an hour 10, hour 15 at most, but not hour and a half, an hour 45. We're trying not to make that happen.
I was supposed to press record on the time. Wow. All right. This is why you don't drink and talk.
And this is exactly why you do it.
All right. So I guess to continue on what we were saying, what would be the best way for the big two specifically to do this? Marvel and DC. What would be the best way to tackle this without seeming like they're just throwing something out there to make people shut up?
I mean, just like I said, good story with a location that's currently not relevant in society, like in the news.
Hey, they're still relevant.
Alternative facts.
Yeah.
Like something, just don't make it from a city that's like currently whose name is being thrown all over the news right now. Like let's just make it somewhere random.
Well, I mean,
like
Trump
I
was
said.
Chicago.
Yeah, let's not make it about Trump in Chicago.
Okay, then I guess since we covered that question, even better. I mean, that was a good answer, and we've
Trump
also dabbled into it.
Trump was going to send in Steve Rogers.
Maybe
we
that's
don't
his-
want that. We don't want that. We
Feds
don't want the
plus
current
Steve
Steve
Rogers.
Rogers. Yeah.
Feds plus Steve Rogers. That sounds too
Steve
accurate.
Rogers leading the Feds, aka Hydra.
AKA Hydra.
But yeah.
That might
So
be
real question:
But
how
then that
can
means the Germans are the problem.
And then just opens up a
Germans
can
of
of worms that
Chicago.
we're not gonna get into in this episode. Listen to the last episode if you really
It's
want
like
to get
Northside
filled in.
So yeah,
Chicago,
we're not
Germans of
talking
Chicago.
about Hydra anymore. We're not talking about Trump. No more media.
Hell Hydra.
No
Hail
more
Hydra.
alternative facts. So even better question: how can you, as a resident of a place like Detroit or Chicago, let Marvel and DC know that this is how you feel? Let them be aware that you want more exposure from your city.
Tumblr.
You gotta hit the streets.
Well, I mean, I'm sure these are like, common issues that have been, relayed to them, I hope.
I know, but for the sake of this podcast,
She just put us
Yeah.
give me
in.
an answer.
We realized that, right?
What?
We both said kind of funny, ridiculous answers. She was like, you know what? I mean, and she got real serious about it.
I'm always
she also
serious
said
after
that we're
3
not doing our
glasses of
jobs.
Yeah,
mimosas.
she did say yeah.
But yeah.
Home brewed.
You go.
Fine.
What? What
Yo.
was the question?
Can you please repeat?
Can you repeat the question?
Can I phone my friend?
The word,
Yeah, it was a tragedy.
the word is apple, as in a fruit that falls off a tree
And the question?
that is red. Would you like it in a sentence?
I am so.
I-
Hey, Don, I'm not following what you're getting at, so
following.
can you repeat the
Oh,
question?
because you said repeat the question, so I made it seem like it was like a,
Yeah, I don't like
a
Hydra.
spelling.
Can you
type-
repeat
the question?
spelling,
Apple.
moving on.
APPLE.
You
Apple.
win. You win the real question now.
Okay.
The question was, how do you feel? How do you think fans or residents of these cities, such as Detroit and Chicago,
I'm a huge
can make their
Detroit fan.
voices? Can make their voices. Excuse me, sir. One more time.
But they could, I guess they could be their own, comic book. I think people could, write their own stories, and they could be the ones working for these, like, big,
And
you
pitch
know,
it to them.
companies.
Yeah.
Yeah, pitching these stories to them. I mean, I'm not as involved in the comic book
Who knows
industry
better
as
than
I
the people that actually experience
Yeah,
it?
and because a lot of these other, there are a lot of these are based in New York. So if you got these like, again like these like hometown writers to pitch their stories and the experiences that they know, that would be a lot more believable, and a lot more interesting to read.
Yeah. I mean, even if Marvel doesn't want to just like adopt their stories like the full mainstream universe, I'm like, this is why you have digital comics. The digital comic realm is their experiment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you can do that for us, and now if it gains X amount of views or whatever people are interested, then boom. He's like, all right, fine. We'll go for a little run on our main universe, and we'll actually print. You know.
So you think more of like a submission-based.
I think it'd be an
Contest.
awesome kind of contest, exactly. Yeah, like if you got like, hey guys, in a month we want to like, give us your like first, chapter, whatever. Give us your best story from where you're from. Show us where you're from.
You can't lose sight of your fans and your fans. I mean, look at us right now. I'm like, we're all from, honestly, like low income neighborhoods, and it's like, but growing up,
broke.
Hey.
But it's like, a lot of our reasonings, our reasons for just being here today and just being the people we are is what? Superheroes. And not even that, you going beyond that. Just any fantasy character that tells you to improve yourself or whatever, video game or whatever medium. So it's like,
All Might.
So it's like, I think we or people like us are their biggest supporter because they show us like, oh, another example of Peter Parker. This is an ordinary kid from Forest Hills, Queens. And he got bitten by a spider, and then
I used to live near Forest Hills, Queens.
We're great.
Me too. Alright.
Queens in the house.
No, I think
Zaku
it's really
and
it's important to get input for your friends.
You have to
from your friends.
And we live in a digital age
Why do
now.
I fucking speak English?
It's fine. We live in a digital age now, and we have so many
Bida also
mediums to
speaks Spanish.
communicate with the companies. It's like you want your consumers, your customers, to be able to tell you exactly what they want. Hey, we want this. There's Twitter, there's Facebook, there's Instagram. You have to listen to your customers.
Because fans are more than just tools to blow air at us and make us feel better during the summertime. They read comics too.
Mm-hmm.
That I hear crickets. So that was a bad joke.
I mean, I understand where you're going with that.
Yeah.
We got it, but the execution, you fumbled on the land.
You should have said that a few drinks ago.
Yeah, you fumbled on the land.
probably. Oh,
It's okay though. It's okay. It's okay.
all right. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good response, Zaku. You went already, didn't you?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
quite remembering.
Repeat the question. I'll repeat the answer.
What's the question?
What was the question?
The question was, what color is my
I got a question for the hometown girl.
Thank you for
No.
Hey.
The Detroit.
The local girl. The local girl. Now,
Detroiter.
tell me off the top of your head right now,
Yeah.
what would be your perfect hero from either Detroit or Chicago? I know you were born in Michigan, but
Yeah.
and your family has roots in Chicago, but either of those, like right now, boom, shoot.
I
Great
guess when you
hero.
think about like cities, so these are Midwestern cities. They're mid-sized Midwestern cities. So there's cities, they're urban, but they also have that Midwestern appeal that I guess maybe people don't realize a lot that like cities like Detroit might have.
All we hear about is the crime and stuff like that. We don't hear about like all the
Yeah, these are like
and
very
shit.
homey. I mean, if you think like a lot of people living in cities like Detroit, Chicago are from, these are areas that used to be more industrialized, had huger populations that, recently in the last like 20 years or so have lost a lot of their population. So they're pretty like open areas, and even like the place where I grew up, it was a lot more populated when I was living there. And these cities have lost a lot of the people that grew up in there. But these are like it's interesting. They're kind of like, these are some like green areas. Where I grew up, I had like a ravine in my backyard. I had a huge backyard, and block parties all throughout the summer. So just kind of like showing the city against this kind of like almost like rural backdrop, because that a lot of these cities are like. And I can't speak too much to Chicago, but my family, though my parents did live there. But I just think it would just be interesting showing like all the different parts of the city that you don't usually see that make it interesting. And you can also talk about like cities like Detroit's their background with like car manufacturing and things like those important things that make the city what they what it is. But I think that'd be interesting.
So, hero.
Okay,
What
sorry,
is
that
it?
didn't answer my question. I don't know. I guess I'm painting like the environment of it.
That's
I
like
can't
this,
think
off
of.
the top of your head, if Marvel or DC came to you right now and gave you a contract, we'll give you 10 grand. Give us a pitch.
Hot
on
dogs.
A hero.
She'd be
I
like
want
10
mine.
grand.
I want a hot dog hero.
I want a hot dog hero. He eats Coney Island, drinks Verner's,
We talking about from Detroit.
and drinks Verner's Pop.
Nathan's Coney Island hot dogs.
So we'll
are
always have this.
better.
So B, Don, and I here will always have this, argument. I like my Coney Islands from
Hero,
Detroit.
hero.
like
We're
my
not talking
Coney
about hot dog.
Islands.
Hero.
Hot dog
Give us
hero.
your hero.
Focus.
I like my Coney Islands from Coney
Give us the
Island.
background. Listen, you got 10 grand on the line. If I'm the DC,
I guess I'd want
I'm
this,
the
like,
DC
a
executive.
typical-
Give me your pitch on a hero from Detroit.
I guess I'd want like a family guy, like a guy who's
Griffin.
a guy who just like, I guess it would be just my typical.
Be a guy.
I know, is that terrible? Me as a woman,
Sexist.
I want a woman, a blue collar factory, woman.
Yeah, keep going.
Who's like, I guess with like, less demand, car manufacturing moving off like overseas or in other, other areas, has to find a way of supporting themselves. And
She could be a rap guy.
She becomes a transformer.
Yes.
Yes. We're done here.
yeah, exactly. That's a good
She
idea.
gets bitten by a
Have it,
radioactive car.
Yeah, it's like General Motors versus Ford, and it's like this whole thing, and like obviously
She
Ford
injects
is
herself
the
with oil.
Megatron.
Oh wait, there's an anime.
Megatron's the bad.
Really?
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
horrible.
That's what I mean. My family's background is General Motors, so I will say. But I mean, even this, this reminds me of my second grade. So second grade, end of the year, we had this big like writing project, and my initial story was about a kid. This is back when I used to live like off of Grand River in Detroit. Like it was about a family who got somehow locked themselves in their garage, and then Superman came to save them. And the story would have come to completion, but my artist at the time bailed on me,
Oh man.
who was 7 years old.
God damn it, Derek.
Right.
And I can't draw myself, so his name was Ryan.
Fucked it up.
So Ryan, this story could have
Ryan.
happened, but you messed me up.
Shout out to Ryan.
Shout out to
Fucking-
Ryan.
Hey,
You're an
Ryan.
asshole.
But yeah, so like I guess even then, like as a 7-year-old, I'm like my idea is like my family gets stuck in this garage. Only I can think of is like Superman to save us, and that was my superhero idea.
But, and that goes to show, like, I mean,
I could have had somebody else to save me.
for someone like you, how can I put this? You understand superheroes, you know about them, but you're not like us in the sense of like, you can't really dig deep in your stories, but you said Superman saves us. And like, that. So it's like, you are just like, probably just a common person, like, you're not a geek in this sense.
In other
of the
sense,
comic
correct,
book
but
world.
not in this. Yes.
So it's like, but you still know, even as a little girl, like, Superman's gonna save you. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that the comic book writers in the company need to remember. Like, even people who are not really 100% your fans and they don't really buy all your merchandise and buy your stories, but this is our American mythology.
Yeah.
Superman is gonna save me.
And it's always like that idea that like specific stories, like specific anecdotes is what's universal. Like we all in these specific stories that still relate to like universal ideas of like, hope, and those are all universal ideas that you can like, still have everyone interested by getting specific.
It stands for sex.
What?
No, we're making a Man of Steel reference.
Awesome. I appreciate the explanations. Thank you.
Well, you saw Deadpool.
I did. I saw Deadpool last weekend. Hey, now you know exactly when it
comics.
aired or premiered.
Alright.
Yeah, where does
I guess
Deadpool
we
take
can-
place?
Modern? In between, I don't know what X-Men movies, but it takes place.
When? I mean, where? Where?
Oh, where? What city?
What was it?
I don't know.
It looks
I
like
don't
New
know.
York.
Looks
All
generic.
cities
No,
look
I
like.
don't think it was
New York's New York City number
I don't
2.
think it was New York.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we don't have highways.
I was gonna say generic highway USA.
That's true.
I want my superhero to be Tom Felton. I think
No, he's British. He has to be like that guy.
he can't. Oh, so Britain can't have superheroes?
Wow.
Well, now
I'm
we
just
know
saying
what-
if we're following the,
First, a nigga can't be an architect, and now.
No, I want him to be an architect.
Brits
Let's
can-
honestly take. I want my architect guy to be. Who was that? Was he a
John Stewart.
John Stewart, the Green
Green
Lantern.
Lantern? I want Green Lantern. I want that. I love that idea of him being an architect. Like, take back what I said. Make him, an architect, and let's go
That's what I'm
places
saying.
with him.
He should go back to Detroit at some point. Be like, hey, like
Where is he now?
in space.
Oh, come
somewhere,
back, man.
Saving the galaxy.
Come back to Earth 718,
But
but
I'm
make
saying,
it
but
Earth
I think that'd be kind
313.
of cool in the sense that he's like, even though I do like things you can't even imagine to save, not even Earth, the Milky Way, but I'm like, my city needs me because we need to rebuild the city. We need to bring this back up to what
Fuck
it
the
can
planet.
be.
Fuck the planet.
There's other heroes. Batman got Earth unlocked. He's beyond Gotham at this point. He got it unlocked. He created the Hellbat armor. He's good. He can protect Earth on his own. He's fine.
Alright, so I think this is a good point for us to start our closing statements. We're going to go around in a circle. For those of you who don't know, we are sitting in a circle. We're going to go into this circle and we're going to
It's like a
give...
triangle.
Alright.
3 of us have to fit on a pretty tiny couch, and then we've got Nico
Don't
over
tell
here.
them where we live.
We don't. And Nico's got the nice,
We
what's
live on
that,
a
ottoman?
couch.
We live on a
Not
couch.
ottoman, what is that?
This is Ottoman.
Ottoman, yeah. You go get the Ottoman, the rest of us get the couch.
We're not fucking rich podcasters, so we don't
Not
have
rich.
like studio.
Nah, man. You know what it was? We had a studio, but then we got into a fight.
No,
So P Diddy shut down the studio.
Yeah, he shut it down.
no, Batman destroyed it by accident.
He
so
did,
that
Yeah,
He
it's
did.
fucking.
One of his drive-by motorcycles.
We didn't have,
destroyed it.
and we didn't get insurance.
We didn't get insurance.
We didn't get
The
bad
Super Bowl
insurance.
Fucked it up, man. We fucked it up.
So we'll start our closing statements. I'll go first.
Why do you always get to go
Well,
first?
because I don't want to. All right, I'll go last. How about that then? Last usually is first for the worst, you know.
Oh.
B-Don has a
All right,
pleasing
so the
voice.
ladies first.
Thank you. So yes, ladies first. I will start. Kidding. Turtle, you can go.
I guess in that vein of inclusion, that's fine. You know, if you want to get started. But I just want to thank
We're all
the
about,
guys.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, no interrupting during closing statements.
You are,
Nico.
and I'm glad. But
Alright, stop mansplaining her, please.
Thank you. First, I want to thank the guys for including me in today's podcast.
Kind of regret it, but
yeah,
it's whatever.
It's whatever. We'll make
Well,
the best
thanks
out of
for
it.
the free alcohol, if anything.
We'll just add it.
Free.
Free.
I'm not paying.
I pay for this. Oh.
Yeah, I'm not paying back. So yeah, this is an interesting topic. I've loved talking about it. I think this would be a really exciting thing to see, and I hope this also propels me to read more comic books, so I can be more informed and probably have better answers for you in coming podcasts.
I mean, I think you did great.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
thank
yeah.
you.
Really good.
Thanks, guys, and thanks, listeners.
This will be the last time you're here.
Oh,
you did great though.
can I still live here though, even if like
No, you
I
can still
can't?
live here.
Oh, okay. I
But,
still get my room.
Yeah, but you
Okay,
did
cool.
great though.
Thanks. Be done.
Okay. I guess I just want to start off and say, you know, I think.
This is a closing statement, so just end it.
I
Yeah,
wanna-
right.
End it.
I
I'm gonna
want
start my
to end
closing
off.
statement with a speech.
I want to end off saying, since you said this is ending, I want to say that I think companies like Marvel and DC and even Image need to take the example of other independent companies that are really focusing on inclusion-based storytelling.
Local
Because
scene.
yeah, they focus
Yeah.
on their people
Yeah.
because they mostly care about their experience.
Yeah.
They know more about their experience, so they
Yeah.
focus on that. And I think it's important that we start covering more topics like that. Focus on different cultures, different people, different beliefs, and that'll push the comic industry as a whole in a better direction.
That would. And business will give them a lot more money too.
A lot more
I
money.
mean, you're always gonna support the character that you could relate to in any way.
Niggas on the page, money in your wallet.
There you go.
Amen.
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 Okay.
Yusaku.
I mean, hashtag heroes from other cities matter. Essentially, is
It's a
what this
long
is.
hashtag.
Metahumans matter.
That's a long hashtag. Have you seen Instagram?
No. I have not.
Metahumans matter.
Metahumans matter.
Metahumans matter.
Humans matter. Yeah, like again, I would like to see more original heroes from more original locations, rather than just the same locations redone for heroes that we've seen for many years now. Because like I said in the beginning, we're running out of space here. Like there's just no way in hell that you can have a story where one hero is handling one scenario.
Oh, MTA.
Yeah.
He's
Oh.
gonna take everybody. Everybody's gonna take MTA. It's gonna take everybody.
You know,
Like
Cuomo and
now with the
heroes.
Yeah.
now I won't be surprised if Marvel decides to create a series
Yeah.
of heroes saving people from the MTA.
Yeah, Cuomo and Spider-Man have a joint press conference. They're gonna save the
Please.
MTA.
Yeah,
We'll
but
use that.
No. You just mentioned Cuomo and Spider-Man. How is Captain America not there?
That's true.
That's true.
You know, no,
This $1 billion
He's fighting
budget
everybody else.
should.
right now,
Yeah.
he's Hydra.
But then, when you consider the fact that when you compare the powers, I guess, with Spider-Man's ability to move around quicker, don't you think that he'd be better off holding it down outside while
No,
Steve Rogers?
he got the web. He's pulling the train. Like, you gotta go, man.
Yeah.
Don't hold the door.
But then
Just go.
don't make him sit in a meeting with Cuomo.
That one, I mean.
Yeah, there's actually an initiative on like
Send Daredevil.
They're
That's
talking
true.
about asking people for their input on how to fix the train system, and I believe the highest requested thing was Spider-Man pulling a move as well.
That's what I'm saying.
Would he
that would
accept
be-
the money? Cause I think they pay them a lot for whoever
Well,
solves
he
the
better
problem with
go
the
pull the
MTA.
train like in them hot ass tunnels. He better get
Yeah,
paid.
Peter Parker suggested the idea. No one knows who
That's
this
what I'm
guy
saying.
is. He's a photographer for the Daily Bugle, apparently. But
okay.
but he
And they don't pay
said
him
that
enough.
Spider-Man should do it.
It'd be so
I
easy for him.
believe
He'd be
him.
in one bus. He'd be in one train station. He just like, yeah, to the other one, just pull it. It'd be so easy for him. Yeah.
But will he get to the Bronx?
What happened?
Who knows?
I don't know.
No,
he may stop at Harlem.
Because his D train is a struggle.
Nico.
That's true.
Closing statement.
Oh man, I don't even know what to say. And I know I say this every single time, but it's so true. Be original. Create brand new characters. It's fine. People are patient. If you give them a reason, at first, let me backtrack a little bit. At first, people will bitch. They will complain like, "What are you doing?" Blah blah blah. But if the last issue of the new hero, if it's awesome and if it makes sense, people will support the hell out you. They really would. Give them a reason to stick with the story. Take the complaints, because people are going to complain regardless. Take it. But as long as the end result is awesome, it's going to work out. So it's like, if it takes a year and a half, don't go beyond 2 years, because that's just ridiculous. But like, create your story, create new heroes, your fans will be there, and then you'll get new fans from these other areas that don't really have a hometown to root for, or girl to root for.
Thanks.
Friendly neighborhood, anyone.
Exactly.
So do we have any like names for these new characters?
Okay, we're not coming
Oh,
up with these
no,
characters.
this
This
is-
is talking about how
Yeah,
we would like to
no.
see
Oh.
them
You
as
have
characters.
This is a
Do
closing
you have
statement.
8 Mile Man.
No, 8 Mile is too close to something.
Mom's spaghetti. I must fight
Mom's spaghetti.
anyone.
Are you
mom's
guys are falling
spaghetti.
right into that whole like
Mom's spaghetti.
generalization thing we just talked about?
Alright.
His
Wow.
catchphrase is "Your knees are weak."
All right.
You know,
so now
his
that,
senses go off when his palms are sweaty.
all right, off
I
track.
think we made something.
No more palm sweaty.
No more
mom's
palm- okay.
spaghetti.
Alright.
Arm.
This is like a
arms
Garfield
already.
It's alright. Professor X has our email. Hit us up.
spaghetti.
No, man. Detroit man.
Detroit.
8 Mile.
But the bad guy is mom's spaghetti. That's his name.
The bad guy is
The
Mom's
bad guy is
spaghetti.
Mom's spaghetti.
And
Okay,
you
but
know-
I like my mom's spaghetti or my dad's spaghetti.
Palms
To be
at the
honest.
ready, sweaty for mom's spaghetti.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go.
So to
Palms are
close,
sweaty. Gotta go.
to officially close out, we'll do shoutouts. We'll
Delete.
start with Turtle right here, and we'll go all around back to me.
I want to thank my parents for raising me.
I think my parents were conceiving me and I'm born. This will never happen without you guys.
Thanks, mom and
I wouldn't
dad.
be here without them.
All right,
And
guys.
honestly, I just feel privileged to have lived in, a bunch of cities. Like, I will say I've, spent all my time in the Midwest and East Coast. But, other than, Albion, Detroit, Buffalo,
All right, shoutouts.
Albany, Queens, New York.
Big
Shout out
shout.
to all those cities. I'm just saying, shout out to my cities. Thanks for raising me. Thanks for, building me. And I
'Cause she
love
from
to
the streets,
visit.
yo.
She married.
I live in an
She's
apartment.
married to the streets.
I have a home, I will say, and a job. So I just,
Yeah,
I
makes sense.
just
Rub
thought
it
I,
in.
I got a
All
job,
you
though.
unemployed
I pay my
motherfuckers
own
out there.
shit.
I thought I should be clear, and I just love that I just want everyone has a unique story of if you've, been like me and lived in multiple cities and haven't, spent as much time in one city, or if you've grown your whole life on the same street, the same building, shout out to you guys and the city that built you and your family and all that. So thank you.
Nico.
Wait, what am I
Shout
doing?
out.
Shout out.
Oh, okay. I was saying,
Can you repeat the question?
Too busy trolling the mic.
Do you have anyone to
Think
shout
about
out to?
shoutouts.
Oh God. For this one, I'll say shout out to my brother because I know he'll eventually hear it, and because he is from Chicago, but he was conceived in the Bronx. But the Bronx was so bad, and we talked about the Bronx was so bad that he didn't want to be here, and that's exactly what my dad and his first wife, my brother's mom, did. They pieced out and went to Chicago. So shout out to them because a lot of my knowledge of Chicago comes from them, and a lot of my appreciation of Chicago comes from them too, because I've been to Chicago twice and I love the city, I really do. So shout out to them for giving me that knowledge.
All
Shout out to Margie's Ice Cream in Chicago.
right. All right. Well,
They have delicious
yeah,
sundaes.
it was his turn to speak.
Oh,
Wow.
damn.
Sorry,
Exactly.
no, you can speak
Alright.
to exactly. Yeah.
Shout out to Chicago for existing.
Without you, we'd have something less to talk about.
Less ice cream.
It's good ice cream.
Shout outs to my girlfriend, Roxy. Cause she made me go to LA last week.
Made
missed
you?
the podcast.
Yeah. She pretty much made me.
That's 2 shout outs back to
That's what I'm
back to
saying. I
back.
gave a
Is
shout
that
out.
a shout out or is it
last
like
year.
a
We're
diss?
showing Rocky too much love right now.
Yeah, for real.
Too much. Take it down.
No, Isaku's.
You gotta break up with her.
You
right
spread
now.
it. No.
Oh,
No.
You heard it right here,
Right
folks.
here. Right here.
Has she heard it though? Did they find out? before?
Find out next week or next
You know what I'm
podcast.
saying?
They just found out
Call
before.
her first and tell her it was a joke. Then she'll hear this. Then everything's fine.
Find out next week whether or not we did break up or not.
A new episode of
But,
Dragon Ball Z.
But yeah, shout outs to her because flying out to LA to see her frequently, I get to experience life outside of New York, and it really is like a culture shock when you go out to a different city because things are so different. Things are either slower, faster, more convenient, less convenient. Like it really, and that's to me personally. Like
Traffic
it really
sucks.
varies. Like the way people schedule their days, the way neighborhoods are. Like 4th of July, people in the streets, lighting fireworks, even though in New York that's illegal, but in LA it's perfectly fine.
Where I'm gonna start ratting you out because apparently there's a reward, so be careful.
We coming for you.
That's
$1,000.
what I'm saying. Per
Yeah.
person?
And
I'm
then-
about to rat out the whole family.
And then it's really cool that we chose this topic for this episode because during my flights, while I was up in the air, and I would like every once in a while peek out the window to see what was happening underneath us. I always wonder, like, there's people living regular lives in these areas that I don't even know where I'm flying over right now, but there's people there living regular lives, typical lives that you just wonder, like, there's so many stories down there, and it's just interesting to think when you think about it, like, wow, what exactly is happening down there? These places that I've never seen or heard of, and probably have no idea are going on.
Very true.
So yeah, shout outs to JetBlue.
Shout out to the people of the Midwest that we actually fly over.
shout out
when we
to
go
Fly
the
over
West
but don't
Coast.
visit.
Shout out to United Airlines proving that no matter where you
Don't
come
cancel
from,
my flight. Don't tell me that the shit is booked and I bought a ticket because.
Yo, no
I'm gonna
lie.
start swinging.
Somebody came up to one of the flight attendants came up to me and told me, "We're gonna have to check your bag." I didn't argue. I was like, "Okay, take it."
Yeah.
my turn.
Who are you?
My turn.
I thought you went first. Don't you?
Wait,
usually
can I
go
do
first?
another airline shout out? I want to shout out real
I want
quick.
to shout out Spirit Airlines.
No, I want to shout out to Delta for letting me. I missed my flight to Minneapolis last week, and I really appreciate you for booking me on a new flight the following day. Thank you.
Cool story,
Be
bro.
done?
Niggas got shout outs longer than the whole fucking podcast and shit.
All right.
Clearly, that's where our mind was at.
Damn.
Shout out to the
Listen, this was your idea.
That's true. I fucked up.
You invited me
In
here,
retrospect.
Word.
although I live
It's gonna
here.
be your last
Although you don't
time.
live here.
Remember, you did great.
Yeah.
It's gonna be your last time though.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep shouting out. Be done. You got it.
Alright. Okay.
Well, you're ahead.
Shout outs. Shout out to
You're taking too long.
Shout out to
Yeah.
I'm not gonna speak. We're gonna have to find a new host.
I mean, we can figure that out.
Shout out to Comic Express again.
Yes.
Always.
Thank
for,
you.
Supporting the decision to move on with this podcast. Shout out to comic book fans everywhere who are just looking for something to relate to.
You are the voice of which we speak about.
Thank you for using my mouth to say words.
Shout out.
Your shout out to Stern.
Shout out.
Yeah, shout out to anyone who has previously talked and been on this panel with us before.
You're deeply missed.
All people, yes, you're missed. You're all part of this panel forever, and we appreciate your perspective.
Sterling is here in spirit.
Come back, and we'd love to have you. To close things out, thanks again, guys, for listening to Earth 718.
If you did,
I hope you had a great time.
They got to this point that I think they listened.
I hope you had a great time listening to us talk, hearing our opinions on the matter, and we will hopefully see you next time, where we will be talking about another issue that we have no fucking clue about. See you next time, a new episode of